So let's talk a little bit about doing competitive intelligence research, and we're going to start by looking at how we would find out information about firms, judges, and attorneys. Before we get down and look at some databases, let's talk a little bit about what competitive intelligence or CI is. So these are a couple of examples. It could be the practice of using commercial databases like Lexis or Westlaw or public sources of information to find out about law firms. It could be using case or docket information to gather uh, information about how judges have ruled in prior cases, or we could track the litigation history of an opposing counsel. So if we wanted to know if the attorney on the other side of a case from us had tried a similar case before and whether they had won or lost that case, we could track that as well. So that's what CI research is. What isn't CI research? So it's not, you're not going to be Magnum PI. It's not a cloak and dagger style information that would cross any kind of ethical lines. You're not shadowing people home from work. And we're not seeking client level data or privileged information from competitor law firms. So why is it helpful to you? So the research techniques that we're going to go over, you can actually use a lot of these during your interview process. So if you're interviewing for a clerkship with a judge, you might look up information about that judge. If you're have an interview with a firm, you could look up information about the firm or the attorneys that you know you're meeting with. And it can also be useful in later practice for the reasons that I've already mentioned. Looking up information about judges or attorneys can be helpful. So let's start with talking about researching law firms. There's a couple of really good ways to go about finding information. On Lexis, there's a product called the American Lawyer Media Publications, and it is what it sounds like. It's media publications, and that talk about law firms, so news type articles, and we'll take a quick look at that. There's a product by Thomson Reuters that we don't actually have access to. It's called Monitor Suite, but it's a really wonderful product for finding information about law firms and judges and attorneys. And if you have access to it in your law firm, it would be something that you would definitely want to use it if you have it. And so that you could see how thorough the reports are, I've posted some sample reports on Blackboard. To get basic information, we can look at the West Legal Directory. I'm going to show you on Lexis.com how to add the litigation workflow tab because that has a lot of source information that you could use to do things like find out information about law firms or attorneys or do some case assessment, early case assessment, that type of thing. Martindale.com is a free source which you might be familiar with, which gives you basic biographical information about law firms. And the business information tab on Westlaw, or a clickable link on Westlaw, gives you some information about businesses, which can include law firms. So let's take a minute. I'm going to show you now the American Lawyer Media Publications and also how to add that litigation workflow tab. So I'm on Lexis.com and I'm going to use the Find a Source tab, and I'm going to type in the title, American Lawyer Media, and hit the Find button. And it's the first publication, and if we wanted some more information about what's contained, we could use the I, of course. And I'm going to look up information about Choate Hall. And I'm using a terms and connector search. You can use a natural language. When I use the terms and connector search, my default is reverse chronological. And these are articles that mention Choate Hall. So for example, this Women Partner Watch, it's fairly recent and it tells us how firms fared in terms of the male-female breakdown, including Choate Hall. So some of these other articles look sort of interesting, including we could find out that there's a group from Wilmer that's moving to Choate Hall. So if we were interested in trying to decide which firm, if we had our choice, might be better. We might be interested in learning about these types of moves. Okay, the next thing I wanted to do was show you how to add a tab on Lexis. In particular, I added this litigation workflow tab. But you can, depending on what your area of interest is, there's other things you could add. We're going to use Add, Edit Subtabs, and the one I added was Litigation Workflow. And I'll just give you a quick look at this. It has early case assessment, which includes information such as information about witnesses, information about judges, attorneys, law firms, damage evaluations. And then under it's basically by stage of your litigation workflow: draft, file, and serve, discovery, research, gathering intelligence, and trial prep. And a lot of these features will be moving over to Lexis Advanced. For example, some things that used to be contained in the litigation profile suite, LexisNexis verdict settlement, and litigation profile suite, these two things are now on Lexis Advanced, and we can look at them there as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about finding information about law firms. And it would be a similar research process for looking at information about opposing counsel. We can look on martindale.com. We can use the Westlaw Profiler. Again, that product from Thomson Reuters, the Monitor Suite. There's an additional product that's available from our law library database list called the Leadership Library, which can give you information about high-profile attorneys, as well as if you're looking for information about people, high-profile people who work at Microsoft or something like that, it would be in there as well. Lexis.com, we mentioned the litigation workflow tab. And finally, for opposing counsel, you can look and see the cases that they've worked on, or you can look at docket information for them. So let's quickly look at Westlaw Profiler since we just looked at Lexis. Okay, and we'll look at it on Westlaw next. And we want to be in the directories section. And here are all the West directories, and this is the West Profiler information, including, sorry about that, information about attorneys and judges. And I'll pick someone that I used to work with. So this is someone who I used to work with at Skadden. It gives us information about where they went to law school, when they were admitted, if there's published works. In addition, if we look over here, the profiler references, we can look at dockets for cases that David was involved in, as well as cases he was involved in. So this can give us a lot of information about the kinds of cases that David tries. Okay, so that's a little information about where we could go to look for information about attorneys. Similar, when we're looking for information about a judge, we can use the Westlaw Profiler, and we get that same kind of information on the left, additional information about all their cases. On Lexis.com, we can use the Litigation Workflow tab. On Lexis Advanced, and it's also still on Lexis.com, which is where I'm going to show it to you, is the Lexis Nexis Profile Suite. Thomson Reuters, I've mentioned that before. Searching for cases and docket information on Bloomberg Law or other sources, and also court websites. So let's take a very quick look at the Profile Suite. So when I'm in the litigation workflow, I can click on it over here. If I was just in the main tab, I can click more, and I'm looking at Litigation Profile Suite. And let's enter information. Say I wanted on judge. Let's click judge and Massachusetts. Okay, so I'm going to look for Judge Patty Saris. That's a pretty unique name. Just so you can see, this takes a little while because they're searching ruling history, publications, news, web information, a lot of different sources. You can compare this to the profiler on Westlaw. Okay, it's taking a really long time. Now it looks like it is still going though, so don't want to spend too much time on this. You can check your email while you're waiting. Okay, so it finally popped up, and you can see that you can get an overview of the cases by area of law, the kinds of motions, the resolutions. So a heavy number for the plaintiff or settled. Okay. Ruling histories, publications, a lot of information here about Judge Saris. Okay. So in terms of researching corporate counsel, a lot of times when we're looking for corporate counsel information, we're also looking about information about the company or markets. So Bloomberg Law has a tab called Companies and Markets where we can get a lot of information about companies. That leadership library that I mentioned off the BC Law Library database list can be helpful. We can search Edgar filings for company information for companies that are public companies, so listed on one of the stock exchanges offering stock for sale. So we're going to talk more about this when we discuss transactional research. On Westlaw, there's a directory of corporate counsel, and then just a reminder on Lexis.com, the litigation tab that we looked at. Okay, so we've gone through a lot of different sources. Let's do a little research challenge here. We're going to be appearing before Judge Young in the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. Since we just looked at Lexis, let's do this one on Westlaw. We want to see if for a copyright infringement claim, how many cases has Judge Young heard in the last 5 years, and how many of these cases have negative treatment. I think I'm actually going to look at this on Lexis because I like the graph that they have on Lexis. So let's take a quick look at this research challenge. Okay, I actually changed my mind. I'm going to do this search on Westlaw. So again, we want to be in directories, the Westlaw profiler, attorneys and judges, and we're going to do William Young in Massachusetts. And the one we want is the first one. Okay, and you can see the front page gives us basic background information, where Judge Young went to school, when he was admitted, all of his published works, where he teaches, including BC, honors, past positions, that type of thing. To get to the information about the kinds of cases he's tried, you go and you look at this litigation history report. This might take a minute to pop up. Okay, so basically this is the last 5 years, and we wanted to look at, let's see, let's look at, so I think we need to expand the list. Let's see. Ah, that's better. So intellectual property copyrights. And we can see that there's been a total of 4 infringement actions in the last 5 years. And we can even see who the parties are. And if we click on the number, we can see the treatment status for these cases. So in one case, um, Judge Young's decision was called into question. Okay, so those are some basic sources of competitive intelligence research, and we'll have another short slideshow that's going to go over jury information.